Hey everyone, welcome back to Code and Stuff. Today we're going to be diving into one of the most fundamental data structures in programming, arrays. Arrays are an absolute must-know for any programmer, and if you're just starting out with Ruby, this is going to be super important to understand. Today, I'm going to cover what arrays are, how to create them, how to access data inside them, and some of the basic array methods that will make your life easier. I'll be coding everything in GitHub Codespaces with VS Code, so you can follow along with the exact same setup I'm using. Let's get started. So, as you can see on my screen, I'm at the Ruby Basics repository that we created yesterday. And what we're going to do a little differently today is that I'm going to be using the web editor instead of the Visual Studio Code editor on my computer. To access the web editor, when we're at the repository, we just need to hit the period button on our keyboard. And our editor, our Visual Studio Code Web Edition, will load up for us. The next thing I want to do is that I want to get this hooked up to, I want to get the code space that I've associated with this repository to get up and running. So I'm going to click here, not that one, this one, sorry, the Remote Explorer. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to connect to the GitHub code space that it attaches to. And it is going to get a second to, it's going to open a new window, and it's going to go ahead and connect to the code space that we've created previously on GitHub. I'm going to give it a second. And everything is loading up. It's loading up the extensions, as we can see. And it looks like we're good to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is let me close these little things. It wants me to use a different theme, and thank you for installing this extension. That's okay. I'm going to create a new file called arrays.rb, and we're good to go. We're ready to get started. Let me make things a little bigger for us. All right. So what exactly is an array? And an array is basically a collection of data that allows us to store multiple pieces of information in a single variable. Right? Pardon me as I turn off Copilot that wants to be helpful. Cool. Let's imagine we want to store a list of students in a class. Without arrays, we'd have to do something like this. I'm going to put some code on our screen here. And what we're doing here is we're creating 4 separate variables and putting the name of a student in each. This is great, but it would get unwieldy really fast. It's fine if we're teaching a class of 4 students. You can imagine this could be a lot more difficult if you're a professor at college and you had a lecture and there were hundreds of students sitting in your lectures, right? It gets really complicated. If we want to perform the same operation on each student name, we'd have to write that code over and over for each variable. Arrays solve this problem eloquently. Let me show you what this looks like using an array. Much cleaner. We've now got all of our student names stored in a single variable called students. Each piece of data in the array is called an element. So let's talk about the syntax we just used. Arrays in Ruby are created using these square brackets. Inside those brackets, we put our elements in there, separated by commas. An array can hold any number of elements. You could have an array with 1 element, hundreds, or even an all. So what does it look like if we want to create an empty array? It looks like this. Empty array equals square brackets. Right? We can also create arrays with different types of data. We can have an array of strings like this. Names equal Aaron, Mike, Ruby, code space. Is that S capitalized? It looks better without. We'll do that. Right. We can have an array of floating point numbers, temperatures, and that would be 98.6, 97.9, oops, 99.1, 98.4. And of course, because we have floating point numbers, we have an array of integers. We can have a scores array equal 98, 87, 92, 79, that was a bad day, and 100. So let me make that a little prettier there for us. And we can have an array of booleans. Oops. True, false, false, true, true, false. These examples show us how versatile arrays can be. But best practice is to keep the elements in an array consistent. All strings, all numbers, all booleans. Like we could have an array where the first thing is a string, and the second thing is a number, and it's a string again, or any however combination. But again, usually we want to keep like things of data together. Right. And I also want you to notice that we named our array as plural. Names, temperature, scores, completed. It's a convention that we use because it's kind of like names. You kind of have a thing in your head like, well, there's going to be more than one here, so it's going to be an array. Right? It helps indicate this variable is going to hold multiple of whatever it is. So now that we've created arrays, how do we get the data back out of them? The first thing we're going to show you is that we are going to use what's called bracket notation. Let's go back. Take this and put it at the bottom here. And let's take a look at this in particular. We're going to use what's called bracket notation, and it's going to be an index position. This, if I wanted to get the name Josiah here, I would do this. Puts students bracket 0. This will print out to the screen Josiah. Now you might be wondering why I use 0 and not 1 to get the first element. In most programming languages, including Ruby, indexing starts at 0, not 1. So the first element is at index 0, the second is at index 1, and so on. So if I wanted Violet, even though it is the third item in this array, I would do puts students 2. And now the last one, if we want to get June, it would be puts students 3. The last element, also the fourth element, and index 3. So to deal with errors, if we try to access something in an array that doesn't exist, it will return nil instead of giving an error. So it puts students 4. That would be the fifth item, of which doesn't exist. This will give us a nil. And same thing with puts students brackets. I just jammed my fingers on the keyboard wherever that number is. That's going to give us nil as well. So this is great. But arrays let us do more than just give us a fancy way to hold our data. Ruby arrays come with a bunch of built-in methods that make working with them much easier. So we're going to explore some of the most common ones. The first thing we can do is that, so we're still using the students array of 4 names. If we do puts students dot length, this will print out 4 because there are 4 items in this array, right? You may wonder, how do we add things to an array? Well, we have the push method. We can do students dot push, and this push will send it the argument called Alex, right? And what this does is that this will add Alex to the array, and it'll look something like this. Let me copy and paste what this. Right. The array will now look like this. The push method will take whatever we send to it and put it out at the end in another array. What we can do is that we can also remove the last element with pop. Students.pop. What that does is it goes to the end, pulls off the last one, and now our array after students.pop will only look like this. Whoops. I accidentally moved my cursor. Right. Other array methods, we got dot shift and dot unshift, which work with the beginning of the array instead of the end. Dot shift will remove the first element. So dot shift is kind of like pop, but it'll do Josiah because that's the first one instead of the end. And unshift adds to the beginning. So how push previously added an item to the end of the array, unshift will add it to the front. I'll confess to you, I always forget which one is shift and which one is unshift, and usually it takes me a couple tries to remember which one does which. I compare it to ever plug in a USB cable, and you know how you never get the right side up the first time. You always, no matter what side you do, you got to turn it like 3 times to get the USB cord in there. That's me with trying to remember which one's shift and which one's unshift. I just have to do it until I get the one that does what I want it to. Cool. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a little practice here. And I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to make a new file called to-do list.rb. And then I'm going to paste in this bunch of code here. I am going to pull the window down so you can see the entire thing. And what I'd like you to do is let's run this file and let's talk about what's happening here, right? And we run the file again by going to our terminal. Let me rearrange the size of everything here. Ruby to do list.rb. When we want to run a Ruby file, we type in Ruby and the name of the file. And I'm going to look at this and we're going to see what this printed out. And let's talk about what happened here. I'm trying to find a good kind of thing. All right. So let's go through this code and kind of like think about what's happening. The first bit is that we are initializing our to-do list. So we've created an empty array for our to-do list. Here, we are adding to our list using the push method, right? And then we are printing out this like some text to make it nice and neat. And then using the each with index method, which we'll talk about a little later on, we're going through the list and printing them all out to the screen. We then removed the first task in there and wrote what it was. And then we added a task to the beginning and we show the updated list using each with index again. And then finally, we reported how many tasks remained with length, right? This little program here is just a showcase like some of the array concepts we've talked about before. We haven't gone too deeply into each with index, but what I'll say right now is that a method that will just go through the entire array and do the same thing for each item in the array. So, to recap today, let's remember that arrays allow us to store multiple pieces of data in one variable. We create arrays using square brackets with elements separated by commas. Elements in an array are accessed by their index starting at 0. Ruby provides helpful methods such as push, pop, shift, unshift, and length to help us manipulate arrays. Arrays are incredibly versatile and you'll use them constantly in your programming journey. As you get more experience, you'll discover even more powerful array methods such as map, select, reduce. We'll talk about them in the future. There's a lot more to learn, but what we've covered today gives you a solid foundation to build upon. So before I go, don't forget to check out the other videos on our website. The links are all in our channel. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future tutorials. Thanks for watching Code and Stuff. Have a great rest of your day.